video. Probably 3 subjects maybe. We'll see how it goes, see how much you get done. Should be. Anyway, this is dispose of the crap. It's always about the crap. There's always crap. This sucks that it's just, the world just keeps producing it. Just big crap engine. So Piero, government is an illusion. So he's arguing with the libertarian folk who don't like the fact that they have to live in a civilization because they didn't choose to live in a civilization and they didn't vote for it and blah blah blah. And so he comes up with this convoluted crap again. He wants to call everything an illusion, so government is an illusion. Retarded thing to say. It's quite obviously a thing, a something. It's not a nothing, it's not a brain state, it's not any of that shit. There's real cops, there's real consequences. Silly. It's not just a mental state. But anyway. So, the title is retarded. The foundation of the argument is retarded. Government's a contract. It's just a list of contracts between people. So the majority of people establish a certain rules. They say, look, there are certain problems that have to be fixed among us. I want my daughters to be able to walk to the general store without getting raped and mugged and murdered. I want not to be taken over by the French. And I want the resources protected. This is even something they knew hundreds of years ago, that yes, if you kill everything, then there's nothing left to kill. So you have to keep enough stuff around so you can kill it. So it's this whole commons problem, essentially. And that any group of people living anywhere will always have to establish rules to protect the commons. You could have no group of people going fishing, people going hunting, people doing anything, and say, let's not establish any rules, because if you don't, then everything gets killed. They trap all the beavers and there's no more beavers, and they kill all the buffalo, there's no more buffalo. They will annihilate everything and there'll be no resource left. They'll cut down all the trees and it'll be a desert. So it's idiotic for any asshole to think there's any such thing as this freedom to do whatever you want thing in some sort of unlimited way. There obviously isn't. You're doomed to failure, like all the civilizations that were doomed to failure, the Easter Island story, if you don't follow rules of civilization. It's just the rule. So if you're going to argue that I have a right to doom other people's children to starvation, death, and a feudal life, for your freedom, they likewise have a right as a majority to say, fuck you. And that's what it always comes down to, is this majority thing, essentially. Whoever has the power. So it can be a dictatorship, like in a tribe of Indians or something, or it can be a king, and all that kind of stuff. And I would say those are not maximal sources of civilization. And so it's best to have some sort of democracy of some kind, some sort of, at least a majority test, at least a no-vote standard. The 60% majority. Like, we should probably have a direct democracy in the sense that if enough people hate an idea or a law, they should be able to veto it. So there should be a public veto. And if the bill isn't written well enough, then write it better. I don't want the public writing law because they're too inarticulate to do that sensibly. They'll just say stupid things like, raise his taxes and give me more free stuff. And that doesn't write into a bill very well. But anyway. So, you can go down the list that once you establish these certain common things, like a common defense against the French, and a common defense against bears, and a common defense against even our houses burning down, and all these little, you want to be able to say, look, let's all agree that if somebody's house is on fire, we show up and do the bucket brigade thing, and all that kind of crap is kind of a social obligation. So yeah, you establish a few civilization rules, and once you start establishing them and you realize that, oh look, this commerce thing works a lot better if we have a common currency, and there's all kinds of other efficiencies like having roads and all of this other crap, and so you end up with an infrastructure, and it's all intended to make life easier, not more difficult. So and it really is just common perception, okay, popular perception of what is more efficient. And if you can't win the argument, then you didn't win the argument. But there's no, and you can have a revolution if you want. You want to try to kill the majority, go ahead and try to kill the majority. I'm not stopping you in any sense other than I'm going to say once you start the war, then yeah, we're going to kill you. That's going to be our reaction to you attempting to kill us, is that we'll kill you. But there's no other options here. The option is to make a more persuasive argument, and you're pussying out, saying I can't do that. I don't have a good argument except I'm a selfish cunt, and I don't want to do it with rules, because rules means I can't molest your children and shit. I'm not allowed to be a pedophile anymore, and I want to be one, or whatever you're after, you selfish bastards. I want slaves. I want to exploit desperation. I want people totally desperate so I can exploit the fuck out of them. Yeah, well, that's a stupid fucking thing to want, you stupid, lousy cunts. And that's the counter-argument to libertarians. You're stupid, selfish cunts. You're the dumb Indians, right? There was smart Indians that created huge civilizations, built shit, had lots of spare time to think and figure out how the stars move. And then there was the dumb fucking Indians, all right, who were still drawing pictures in mud. You're the dumb Indians. Okay, see, that was easy. But Piro, of course, totally overanalyzed and underfactualized. No real understanding of the purpose. Okay, the inevitable function. Why does government just keep showing up? Oh, it keeps showing up because it's rational. That's why it keeps showing up. It's rational. Oh, for fuck's sake. Anyway. Yes, enough of that. So then there's this guy, okay, Kenneth Katona. Nice enough, but I mean, he is some sort of brain injury guy, alright? He's a little bit annoyingly obsessed with having arguments with me, and he's just really not up to the task, and he just keeps pretending he is, and it is kind of annoying. I mean, he should go find some littler fish to attempt to fry, because, yeah, I don't fit in his pan. Kind of a thing. Anyway, inmendham has free will. Just a totally retarded video, in the sense that he doesn't say anything. He just does this compatibilism thing, blah 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 blah, mush mush mush. There's no. Again, my obligation to you, you're going to tell me there's something called the free will. My first point to you is, explain what a fucking free is, okay? You keep using this goddamn stupid word. Free means you're out of jail. Free means somebody took the ball and chain off your ankle. Free means you can fly. The atmosphere doesn't hold you down or push you back down. What the fuck does free have to do with any kind of brain function at all? Will you please explain to me how you can take the word free and how associate it with something that goes on in a neural network? Just explain to me what a free in a neural network would look the fuck like. Because I don't think it can possibly be applicable. It's not rational language for the subject. It's like calling something a doohickey. It's like somebody calling the buttons on the remote control a steering wheel. It's just not an appropriate word to use. You wouldn't say people are steering wheeling on their phones, instead of texting. Would you? You wouldn't call it steering wheeler, instead of Twitter. It's just not a rational word to apply to the function of a human brain. It's just idiotic as a word. It can't possibly be connected to anything called the brain function. So until you explain exactly, draw a picture of how a neural network all of a sudden says, I can play the piano, or all of a sudden, I'm a reasonable motherfucker, I'm not a selfish cunt. It just automatically happens. It doesn't automatically happen. It doesn't happen freely. Okay, it happens in a very constrained way where some nun hits you over the fucking... Maybe that's how he got the brain injury. Yeah, a nun hits you over the fucking head and says, no, wrong answer, fucktard. Yeah, so maybe you got hit over the head a lot because you were a fucktard a lot. I don't know. But the point is, until you can you're just basically arguing for the existence of fairy godmothers and Tinkerbell. There's no other choice. There's a circumstantially programmed conditional brain state, cause and effect, or there's fairies and demons. Now, if you want to believe in fairies and demons, I suppose that's your prerogative, but I'm going to insult your intelligence. There's just no doubt about it. So as soon as you talking about the free fairies and demons that are causing us to become good or bad people, then yeah, I'm going to say somebody should hit that fucker with a stick. Because you're stupid as shit. Alright, anything else need to be said on that? So really, I've already done this subject to death. I've already explained I have a huge problem with this applying of the word free. So until you explain what a free looks like, we can't have a conversation. Now, the existence of a will is sort of another just useless tripe word. I mean, you're just calling the thing that does the acting, the the reacting element, this thing actually will now convert all of this blah 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 into an action, and you're saying that's a will. Well, fine. I call it an action. I call it a decision. But there's just no point talking about it in some sort of like there's a real choice that will be made, because no, there really isn't. Okay, the thing is going to go eeny, meeny, miny, mo. There's, that's not. It's completely determined. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo is completely determined what the answer is going to be. There's a certain, yeah, it's not free to go eeny, meeny, miny, mo. No, it doesn't do that. So anyway. So is there anything else that has to be said on this? I mean, it sort of relates to the mystic. I mean, he posted a last crazy ranty thingy about how it's just circumstantial. I mean, we're just circumstantial victims to this universe doing this grinding thing, and this is what it farts out. And that part is interesting. I mean, I'm doing this whole physics thing, and it'll be interesting to just, trace back all this goop into this idea of the fact that all this subtle complexity is, and it's all inevitable. I mean, it's just a clockwork mechanism. It's just something that's, it's like a weeble, or some sort of, you could take some sort of totally, well, it's even like, what's your faces, use the analogy for Trump of the balloon and letting the balloon go, and it just goes in this blah, 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 blah. But yeah, all that is just because of circumstances. It's inevitable. Each time you do it in exactly the same circumstances, it's going to do exactly the same thing. And it is kind of amazing to think that our whole existence on this planet, in this very moment we're existing in, billions of years of evolution, and it's all just a balloon fluttering. It doesn't have any real, there's guiding physical rules. The balloon can't go to the moon. The balloon isn't likely to draw a picture of Richard Nixon as it's fluttering, but that there's this real perception. The cat's having a sneezing attack. It's okay. It's alright. You're okay. He's getting old. That's a little bit of a nasal problem. Anyway, cats can't blow their nose. It's, fact. not in any kind of like decent way, civilized way. I mean, the libertarians would just say, yes, go ahead, blow your nose on people. Fucking cunts. So anyway, that's probably enough on free will. But I'm just saying, yes, it's all very interesting that all this complexity could be the byproduct of just a, circumstance. Just circumstance. But we can see it happening. We can go back in history and we can watch the characters that were, created, the monstrosities, King Edward the 400th or whatever, and you could figure out that, oh yeah, of course he was psychotic, because, his father was psychotic, and his father before him was psychotic, and his father before him was psychotic, so yeah, the fact that he was psychotic, makes perfectly good sense. So you can see it all coming. When you look into the past, you can see the wheel falling off the wagon, and it was like, oh fuck, that's so obvious. How did they not see the wheel was falling off the wagon? Everybody will look back, if there is a future, they'll look back at right now and they're just like, oh man, how could those people be so fucking stupid? Well, we only have $27 trillion worth of debt that nobody can pay back. No problem. So that sort of leads into the next thing. Okay, so some guy who's getting kind of annoying, he sent me a PM, and then he insisted, I had to post it now as a comment on a not related video, which is kind of irritating. I don't like people doing that shit. You could have found a video that's more related to the subject to post your fucking comment on, but he has to make sure I see it. Because he has to have an answer. Anyway. I'm not confident in the YouTube system, PM, so I'm posting here. I apologize, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, well, you can apologize, but I'm just saying, it's still just kind of annoying to berate me to pay attention. Or maybe you should ask for me to pay attention in some more overt way. Like, Gary, I really need you to pay attention to me. You could send me a little angsty face, so I'm really sure send me a little emoticon that's all angsty. I was wondering what your thoughts on usury. Well, just the word itself is pretty, that doesn't sound very good. It kind of sounds like exploitatively. Yeah, I don't think exploity is good, and usury isn't good, and fuckery isn't good, and rapery isn't good. So yeah, it doesn't sound like a good thing to me. And by usury, I mean any interest charged on money. Well, any interest would be, especially when you put in capital letters, kind of retarded, right? Because you would definitely have to pay the maintenance of, like, let's say we have an IOU. I decide to lend you money, and I have to write it on a piece of parchment. I have to write a piece of parchment up, and it costs me $1.50. Well, you're getting the loan. You should be paying for the parchment, right? So that at minimum, I should be able to charge you for the parchment. And then, the fact is, I had to write it, and I had to write it literally. So I had to, write it in regular text, and maybe it's irritating. So maybe that took me 15 minutes to do the exchange, because I had to ask you a few questions like, you're not just going to shove this money up your ass, are you? Or buy a giant dildo and shove that up your ass, are you? I had to ask you a few questions just to say, hey, this guy might be able to pay me back. I had to do that, didn't I? So should I get a little bit of money for my time? So I should get paid for that, right? And then there's the whole idea that, yeah, it's kind of a risk to give some asshole your money, because they're probably an asshole and they might not pay you back. And you might have to get cops to go after them to get your money. Or you might have to get lawyers, and they're expensive. So, you should have some hedge against that, some sort of insurance, right? So, insurance wouldn't be called usury. If I had to pay for insurance, against somebody killing me or stealing my money or doing all that kind of stuff. That's part of me having money in the first place, is I have to protect it somehow, right? I have to have it in a vault somewhere, and I have to keep the bad guys from stealing it. So again, you just broke the question by asking any interest. Any charge, any fee? No. Yes, there are reasonable fees, and the fees come down to the fact that I would argue you're entitled to your time. You're entitled to charge a reasonable price for your work and service to the function of the process, and that's legitimate. You're allowed to make it into a business, and you're allowed to make money doing business. Now, how much you're allowed to make that's the question. So you're just kind of not getting it. That it's not the principle of interest that's broken. It's the usury part. It's the part where you say, I don't want to just be rich. I want to be a billionaire, and I don't care. I'll take advantage of any circumstance. I'll kill the last beaver. I'll eat the last lobster. I'll enslave humans. I will cut their hands off. I'll do whatever it takes to make the money. Now that's when it goes too far. If you get my drift. Taking advantage of people's desperation. Their kids are going to die if they don't get the money. That's disgusting. To make a profit on that. It's disgusting. Alright. Modern rationalizations has redefined it as some arbitrary too much interest. Well, it's not really arbitrary. You can sort of know what too much looks like. I certainly know what too much looks like, just like I know the difference between artistic nudity and porn. I mean, maybe you can't make these distinctions, but I definitely know what stuff is 10 feet on the other side of the fence and 10 feet on the other side of the fence. So maybe the stuff right on the fence is a little bit complicated, but you definitely know the stuff that's way the fuck over the fence and the stuff that's way over the side of the other side. So I'm just saying that isn't that fucking goddamn arbitrary. But I suspect usury is a qualitative evil. Yes, qualitative evil, not a quantitative one. Well, I think it's both. I think it's both quantitative and qualitative. The quality of the harsh, brutal punishments for people having real life crisis. You borrow money, the husband dies, the widow has no capacity to pay the money back in the time frame allowed, and she's willing to negotiate in sense of I'll try to do my best, and maybe it'll take me 2 years longer. And yes, it would be qualitatively ludicrous to sit there and cut her kids' hands off because or deny them an education or do some other brutal thing because you can't wait a little extra time to get your money back or something like that. And then the quantitative one would be billionaire. Sure, that's way over. You getting paid more than, let's say, $100 an hour or something. I'd say, like, what is a human being's time worth? I mean, what, $100 an hour sounds pretty good. 200 at the most or something. What kind of preposterous number are we going to come up with and say some person's time is worth this preposterous amount of money? I think the theory centers around the creation of debt. Well, the creation of debt is, sort of inevitable in some senses. You're going to have to create some kind of ability for people to pawn their life to pay even their taxes or something. And I've explained this before. I mean, this is another subject that puro idiots and they can't even come close to understanding. But the whole creation of value, money, is in the sense of pawn shop. You put real goods in, you get this ticket out, and the ticket is this government guaranteed ticket, and that's basically what cash is supposed to be. But I mean, that's what everybody's really doing. That's what you're doing when you're going to the bank. You're mortgaging something, either your character or a physical thing.
Could be a new post.
Not now, thank you, retards. So yeah, that's that's the principle of the thing, and the principle's not broken. It's the people applying it that suck. All right, I think that's in the center creation of debt. When you borrow money, you owe the principal plus more money. Well, again, see, the more should just be the amount, the cost of the infrastructure costs. Those are the costs you should pay. So you should pay somebody who doesn't get $5,000 a minute salary. You should pay somebody who can write the little notes and put them in the vault for maybe $20 an hour, not $2 million an hour. So yes, as long as you have a mechanism where you're not letting some exploitless cunt run the bank, then it's not a bad idea. This is qualitatively different from investment, where the investor gains only if no increase in the venture as a whole gains. Well, the whole idea of investing is just kind of shammy also, because again, that just becomes a guaranteed gain. Once you diversify, it's this, I win, you lose. It's this whole monopoly advantage. So yeah, if you're going to get in on the ground floor on all these businesses, one of them will be the monopoly, and then you win. So I mean, you're sort of guaranteed in a broken economy. And the whole real broken thing, as I keep pointing out over and over again, is none of this shit would matter. It wouldn't matter how lousy and rotten and shitty the character with these fucking exploitless pigs was. See, the Donald wouldn't matter if there was no Donald Jr. and Eric and fucking cunt Ivanka and little whatever Tiffany. If those cunts weren't involved, then it wouldn't matter. Okay, it's the legacy cunt is the problem. Legacy skanky bastard. Fucking fucktard who think they earned something and they didn't do a motherfucking thing of merit in their existence. They walk around all proud like they're owners of something and like they actually did something to deserve it. They deserve the $1,000 suit, and they deserve to walk around like they did something, and they didn't do shit. They're walking around like they got a gold medal in the Olympics and they didn't fucking earn it. That's the bad. Get rid of that, and this whole thing doesn't matter. The shitheads kind of just become nuisances. You turn Jabba the Hutt into a little tiny little maggot. Okay, a little irrelevant maggot. Get rid of the legacy asshole, and a little bit of asshole doesn't matter anymore. It's legacy asshole that's the problem. It's forever asshole that's the problem. I mean, it's like a bug infestation or something, right? If it doesn't last forever, who cares? Big deal. Okay. Oh, you had some bugs in your house for a week. Who cares? Not a big deal. But if they're there forever, yeah, then it's a big deal. If the venture is profitable, more actual wealth is created. Well, there's no real actual wealth created because some venture is profitable, because basically what it means is you basically probably put somebody else out of business. You closed to somebody else's shop. You destroyed somebody else's jobs, all of that crap, and you're really just exchanging people. You're moving them probably from a $15 an hour job to a $10 an hour job. It's the Scrooge thing, okay? The modern progress doesn't make things better. It just makes it more easy to exploit the fuck out of people. And that's what our economy has done. It's destroyed wages. It hasn't done anything called productivity, okay, in a sense. Technology has certainly been productive, but it's been completely destructive to the working person. If some venture fails and the usury system is used, there is no increase in wealth, but the debt remains. Well, that's one of the problems that's argued about inheritance. How come you inherit the profits and you don't inherit the debts? So this is a real problem with the hypocrisy of the inheritancers, the spawn of the wealthy. It is they take no responsibility. If you're going to sit there and inherit the benefits, then you should inherit the fucking liabilities. And so there should be no such thing as a bankruptcy write-off. Your fucking kids should pay back their father's debts. So no bankruptcy write-off, no public come to the rescue and pay the bills that you can't pay. No, you pay them. Little Eric goes to work and earns the money to pay back the contracts his daddy didn't fulfill. But they don't want that deal, of course. Further, if you take some simple example of a closed system, and look, the whole stock market, again, is a racket, right? It's this racket where we say, I want no liability for what happens. Yes, I want to get rewarded if they come up with a racket that works, and I'll accept the penalty. The only penalty I accept is you'll take my initial investment if they go out and murder people. Yeah, but I'm not going to compensate the victims. I'm not going to be responsible for any more than the few $100s I might have invested in stock money. That's bullshit. So I'm just saying these are all bullshit systems and easily identified as bullshit, hypocritical, one-sided, we win, you fucking lose systems designed to keep a bunch of people who didn't earn it in power. Further, if you take a very simple example of a closed system with small infinite money supply, and it will see that loans create debt that then exceed the actual money supply. Well, again, it should exceed the actual money supply. I mean, it's only rational to lend money almost in any circumstance if you have demographic and actuarial tables that say it's a reliable bet. You can say that, look, I can create a small fund, an insurance fund, against times when there's little dips and there's little problems with people paying back right away, but there is no real potential for the earthquake, for the complete national disaster of, like, housing losing 90% of its value or some sort of preposterous hyperinflation. Now, if you're going to create a system that can insure against that, well, then you can't do anything. Yeah, you can't have any economy if you try to insure against the complete disaster. It's too expensive to insure against that. But you certainly can insure against reasonable risk. And so certainly it's quite possible to lend money without having any real capital. Or essentially, as I've put it before, it wouldn't make much sense for having a gold economy and for a bank to lend, say, $200,000 on a house and then have to keep $200,000 worth of resources in the vault. Okay, plus the idea is that if you have the deed to the property, if the bank owns the deed, the bank owns the value of the money it lent. It owns maybe $400,000 of the real value of the house. And it would be stupid for it not to turn that value back into cash, to put it in the pawn shop, get cash, and do things with the cash. It would be stupid to take the resource and lock it up in a vault. It's retarded. It's against the very function of economy. The whole reason why the rich are evil is because they're taking ownership and taking property and taking things, hoarding things, and taking them off of the market, and then making a resource scarce economy and driving prices way up. So everybody has to borrow money to do almost anything. They have to rent their life. We're all obligated to pay the federal debt, a huge, preposterous amount of money. Per person, per taxpayer. You're talking $300,000 fucking dollars of debt. It's real. It's real debt. It's not nothing debt. It's real debt. And so it's rent. So we were born into a rental agreement. For fuck's sake. Perhaps that example is oversimplified. Yes, it is. But does it ring true? No. With what is observed, there seems to be a lot of debt with no feasible way of discharging it at all. Well, again, you're going to blame the people who lent the money. I'm going to blame the people borrowing the money. And certainly I'm going to blame the people who are taking advantage of people's desperation. So yes, I'm going to blame people making huge profits off engineering a debt system where you can't even afford to live in a house and you can't afford to do anything. So yeah, I'm going to say that that's all evil. But there's nothing fundamentally wrong with the banking system. The banking system is just the butler for the rich. I mean, people keep trying to evade pointing the finger where it needs to be pointed, which is legacy wealth. Legacy wealth is what destroys the economy. Legacy ownership is a monarchy. Okay, it makes it impossible for there to be any migration from one class to another. It's what's creating all the barriers. It's what's locking all the access to the infrastructure, the economic infrastructure, away, where people have to have a minimum of a certain huge amount of money to be able to survive, to play the game. They can't even get in they can't pay the cover charge to get into the fucking game. The casino, if you want to call it that. The cover charge already excludes half the population. And that's the real problem. I believe this point is made in the book, The Creature of Jekyll Island. Yeah, I know the Creature of Jekyll Island is, again, stupid. It would be stupid not to have a banking system that used fractional reserve banking. That reduces the cost of lending money, not increases it. If you had a gold standard, nobody could borrow money. So you just think about what that means to our consumption equation. And again, I don't wish to imply that I think anybody really needs to borrow money in the modern world. In the sense that you can go to work, you can save money, and then use your savings to do something. But it sort of does make some sense in some circumstances when you think about it, to be able to get yourself into a house and pay it off while you live in it, rather than waiting until you're too old to enjoy it. I mean, you're walking around in your brand new, I finally got into a house. And, you're walking around in Depends or something. I mean, you're almost ready to go out the back door in a box. What good would it be to force people to wait until they're almost dead to have the privilege of living in a house? So I think obviously for some things, debt makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. But it shouldn't be at the hands of usury. Yeah, it shouldn't be at the hands of people exploiting and manipulating and taking advantage. It should be at our hands. We, the people, should have a public bank that takes care of those kinds of mortgages and does it exactly at the price of what it costs to provide the service. And that's it. And nobody gets rich. Nobody becomes a billionaire. They all get paid a reasonable price for doing a little bit of writing on a piece of paper and saying, you owe some money and here's your fucking receipt and please pay us back, fucker. Alright, that's probably enough. But there's no point in talking to these imbeciles. Nobody wants to really research how money works. Nobody wants to understand the difference between a bond and a dollar bill. I mean, they're not the same thing. They're not even close to the same thing. There is only one $1.3 trillion of these things. This is cash. Cash has been protected. It hasn't been printed. The banks, okay, provide you checks, okay, and they go between the banks, and then the banks in their Federal Reserve accounts transfer this. This goes back and forth between the banks based on checks, you see? But loans are very different. When you get a loan agreement, it doesn't look anything like that. Okay, it's not money. It's a contract. It's spelling out what you owe. The deed to a house, it's not money. A commodity, a piece of stock, that's not money. And people really have to understand, it's a cash-based system. That's money. That stuff. The rest of the shit is a bunch of private contracts. Now, obviously, the public bonds, the government issues, they're not money, but they're backed by the American government's capacity to produce the money. Now, obviously, it has, say, if it has $20 trillion worth of bonds issued, it would have a hard time paying them all in one day if there's only $1.3 trillion in cash available. It's going to have a hard time. It's just going to have to keep selling stuff, getting the cash, giving the cash back, then it has to sell some more stuff, get some more cash, pay the, and there's only so much stuff the government could pay, actually sell, of course. But that would be the idea. It's a barter system at heart, and the only thing, and the cash is the way the barter is exchanged. There's nothing broken in the cash. It's that people have made a bunch of barter agreements based on, well, I have 100 imaginary sheep, and I'd like to trade them for 50 of your imaginary donkeys. I mean, they've made a lot of crazy barter agreements where, I say something like, well, I could pay you back over 400 years. How would that be? Like, we get a loan and I pay you back over the next 400 years? I mean, the fact that people have made silly agreements, that's not money's fault. That's people's fault. And the fact that bankers have found a way to package insanely silly agreements and have other people buy them, well, that's not money's fault. But obviously when the government, FDIC, insures a bunch of junk bonds, well, that's the government's fault. That's the people's fault for allowing that to happen. Obviously some criminals have gotten into the government and engineered silly systems. So that's true. There are crooked bankers. There are crooked government officials. There are liars and cheaters in government. But again, it's not the money system that's broken. It's the people we have put in charge of the money system, and ultimately they're just working for the inheritance wealthers. They're just, the stock market isn't owned by working people. Okay, except for obviously the unions have bought into it, which is ironic, right? See, that's their own bad. Union money in the stock market, union pension money in the stock market is an oxymoron kind of move, right? They've basically invested in the very system that intends to unemploy them. I mean, it's almost, you almost have to get a little chorkle, like these union members have any principles. Obviously, they don't. They're just saying, what's in it for me in the short run, because I intend to destroy my union anyway. Because I'll invest in the very capitalist system that's going to guarantee my destruction. There's no making sense out of it. And then they also want the government to guarantee our pensions. We want to invest in the stock market, but we want to have a guarantee of how much we get back. I mean, it's just so bogus on so many levels. The taking advantage, the selfish bastardery that goes on. Everybody is just a selfish bastard. I mean, nobody has a principle in all this mush. That's what's wrong. I mean, I guess I don't know what can you say? I guess apparently these principles are too elusive. A fair fight, having to earn the gold medal, that escapes people's capacity to understand. I don't want. What should earning have to do with anything? We're a country that believes in inheritance. We all should inherit it all. Fuck this earning crap. No, the blue bloods are the only bloods worth giving a shit about, and everybody else is just one of those darkies. Well, that's what's going on in the average human brain. It's just grinding their own advantage. Just grind. Oh, I'm going to be a billionaire someday, so I don't want to pass a law against that. Because, boy, I'm really cool, and I'm going to be a billionaire. Because I got this idea for this little thing. You know, I got this shiny nail, and you stick it in your eye, and it's really exciting. It totally excites you. You're totally obsessed with it. Once you stick it in your eye, it obsesses you. It's like the Wonder Nail. I'm going to be so fucking rich. Oh, sorry, I just totally depressed myself. Oh, man. Oh, God. And this isn't even counting all the little animals, the horror everywhere. There's just horror everywhere. And people are playing these silly, stupid, fucking games. I so regret taking that first breath. I should have just tried to suffocate. Just should have kept my head in the vagina. I'm not coming out. I should have grabbed onto something.